Everybody. Welcome back to the Just Make It Pretty podcast. Today we are talking about customer experience, and I have a special guest with me today. So, if you are in the home building industry and you want to find out a little bit more about how your culture affects your customer experience, stay tuned because this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Just Make It Pretty podcast, the slightly unhinged marketing podcast for home builders and beyond. I'm your host, Sarah Haynes, also known as the Pixel Wizard, and my goal is to tackle the tough stuff that goes in behind the scenes in marketing and offer actionable tips, creative insights, and a little bit of humor to spark some creativity. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get started. So today I have Genevieve Benson here with me. I'm so excited to have you on. Genevieve is the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Milesbrand. And Milesbrand is a branding and marketing company for real estate developers and home builders. And I've been following you for a while. We've been in a couple groups together, and it's just been so awesome getting to know you. And I couldn't think of a better person to have on. So thank you so much for joining me today, Genevieve.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your podcast today. I'm excited to talk about customer experience and get into it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I like knowing you a little bit. Like last year, we talked about this as well. So I'd love for you just to share for our listeners a little bit about you, about your background. I'm sure you can also share a little bit more about Milesbrand because I did that intro really quick. So share a little bit into you.
Great. So as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Milesbrand. I have been with the agency now for about 7.5 years, which is crazy. It's flown by. I've had 2 babies during my time here. It's been a great culture and fit for me. And I just fell in love with this industry. I fell in love with Milesbrand because of their commitment to the new home industry and really the ability to elevate the messaging and honoring the biggest purchase that anybody ever makes. Dave transitioned us from a general agency about 30 years ago to Milesbrand, and our brand promise is from land to brand. And what he saw as a true opportunity is a lot of what was happening in the new home industry was strictly marketing, and it really needed to be approached with branding at the forefront and to really elevate the story around that. So it's great that we have the opportunity to do that for builders, but also for large master plan and mixed use communities throughout the country. So it's an honor. And prior to joining Milesbrand, I was first introduced to the new home industry when I joined Metco Landscape. So they are the largest privately owned, or they were the largest privately owned landscape company here in Colorado. And I headed up their construction division for new business and was introduced to developers and home builders. And I said, oh my gosh, I love this industry. I want to be a part of it. But my background is in interior design. So I really missed the creative aspect. Attended a local HBA event, heard Dave Miles speaking at the Innovation Summit. And I said, how do I meet with that guy? I have coffee with him. I want him to be my mentor. And one of my good friends happened to work for his sister company, Strategist, which is a digital agency that he sold earlier this year. And she was able to connect us. I was able to have coffee with him, and over several conversations, now 7.5 years later, I'm part of the team. That's a little bit about me and a little bit more about Milesbrand and the history of the agency.
Awesome. I love watching everything that Milesbrand puts out. Like every time you're like a new branding or a new community, I'm like, ooh, and you always do the prettiest videos. So I'm always stalking your page. You guys do really good work. And I love that story. So I want to get into this topic of what real customer experience looks like in the home building industry and how your internal culture and the leadership and your marketing, your sales, it all plays a role in kind of what your customers are going to experience and what they are going to rave about later, or maybe not rave about later. I want to dive right in. Talk to me a little bit about what you feel like this customer experience topic actually means.
Great question. It's such a big topic. It's such a broad topic. It became a buzzword a couple of years ago, so everybody really jumped on the bandwagon, but I don't think people understand it on a deeper level. They like to use the word, they like to put it in front of their title if they can. But to me, I think it's a holistic view of every touch point that your customer goes through. But it's not just the customer journey. It's also, how do your employees interpret your brand? How are they living up to your brand promise if you have a tagline? If you don't, how are you training your employees to activate your brand and to really live your brand? Are you hiring for culture? What does your hiring process look like so that you can get people that are aligned with your brand, that can become brand ambassadors for your company? And if they're in love with what you do and they believe in what you do and they believe in the end outcome, getting people to these into these beautiful homes and getting them excited about your brand and wanting to interact with you and hopefully buy from you again in another 10 to 15 years, I think that's really impactful, but it takes people looking at it on a deeper level instead of getting past the buzzword and aligning all the different departments and saying, how could we make some incremental improvements across every touch point? How are we showing up? How are we activating our brand, from sales to how are we talking about our brand on the marketing side? How is home warranty living up to the brand? And just really every touch point, and thinking about how do we get all of our department heads to really think about this in a more holistic way, and what are some proposed incremental improvements that we can all do. And all these tiny improvements really add up to, okay, we can really elevate the customer experience. We can really get excited and think about this in a different way and infuse points of joy and infuse points of differentiation. And I just get really excited about that and thinking through how a builder might approach it.
Absolutely. I think it's something that, like you said, like people say all the time, but I feel it like it's, oh, leadership's really worried about this, but then it doesn't trickle down to everyone. So it's just, oh yeah, we have a great customer experience. And no one knows what that even
Right.
means or what it even
Yes.
is. So
Yes.
it's like this myth of just do a good job, give a good service. And
Yeah.
then that's where it ends. And like people don't really know how to do that necessarily. So I love the connection between your internal culture and your customer's experience, because it is gonna bleed through. So talk a little bit about your perspective on that. Like, how do you feel like the internal part of your company, how does that affect what your customers experience?
I think a lot of it has to go back to training. How are you training people? How are you onboarding? And then how are you consistently recommitting as a team to your
Mhm.
brand and to your customer's experience? And I think with each conversation, you need to lead with curiosity and empathy for what your customers are going through, what these home buyers are going through, whether it's their first purchase, their first home purchase, or they're moving up or they're moving down, whatever that is, whatever that journey looks like and how it aligns with your product. I think it deserves a deep conversation. Each department needs to look at, how do we touch this customer journey and how can we approach it differently, and how can we help to anticipate what some of the needs are beyond just, let's just check the box. This is our paid search ad. We have paid search. Great. Have you dug in? Do you know what those paid search ads look like? When's the last time anyone looked at that? And I know that's such a simple thing and that's just a small, tiny little part of it. But if you do that along every single piece of that customer journey, I guarantee you're going to uncover opportunities for improvement. And
Mhm.
so I think it really has to do with training and awareness. And it does have to start at the top. And every department needs to be brought into the conversation. And everybody needs to be intentional about how they're approaching the customer journey.
Absolutely. So I really like, as you're talking too, I'm like, this really goes back to like core values of your brand, because if you're not even starting there, like you can't express to someone something that you don't fully understand. Like in that onboarding and in your meetings, like those core values are so important. I feel like, yes, it starts with leadership, but like you have to be able to recite that. Every person in your company has to be able to tell you what those things are.
Yep. And that's why, so typically when we're working with a builder, we encourage them to have no more than 3 core values because people won't remember it. Totally agree with you on that. In addition, we like to have a brand promise that distills everything down into a succinct phrase. Not only does it provide external clarity so customers can start to understand what they might expect when they interact with your brand, but it provides internal clarity So when your team members are speaking about your company or speaking about your brand, they have that to always refer back to. And that's what I like to activate a brand around is core values and that brand promise. How are you bringing that brand promise to life at every touch point?
Yep.
Even when you hire, looking through, does this person align with our core values? Do we have some synergy there? Does it feel like a natural fit? Are they excited about our brand? Are they excited about what we stand for and what our brand promises? And there's different culture index and different types of surveys and things that you can and have people take early on to start to uncover if they align with you and align with your organization.
Yeah. I think the core values discussion, like building that into your brand, especially if you're doing like a rebrand or if it's you're starting fresh, it's like the perfect time. I've seen this. I've pushed that to builders. You need to have a brand guide essentially.
Yes.
And then that just like all the marketers are like, yes, I want that. And then that's where it stops. Does your
Yep.
salesperson know what your brand guide looks like? Probably not. And I've seen
Nope.
that so many times just in my experience. But what other things do you think like home builders are doing maybe not as good as they should, or just not like specifically like they're just not using what they have to their
Yeah,
advantage?
totally. I think a lot of the builders out there have the core values, have a mission statement, have a tagline, but how deeply does your team understand it? Do you revisit it on a regular basis? I think twice a year you should be revisiting your brand and having some kind of presentation, and maybe marketing leads that, maybe leadership, and each department has a portion of that so that everybody feels really invested and involved, but make it fun. And it needs to be something that's it's not just a brand guide that sits on a shelf and collects dust and nobody looks at beyond their hire date. It's how is it integrated into your training? And then how do you revisit it with your employees that are there year after year in a really fun and engaging way? And there's tons of different ways to do that. But I think twice yearly workshops help to bring it back to the forefront of everyone's mind. And it's just being intentional about it. And it's going beyond what are the logo guidelines? What are our color guidelines? It's you can go a lot deeper. And so I think that's the opportunity for builders. It's okay, here it is, here's our brand Bible, but now how do we bring it to life? And if you don't have the conversational, if you don't have the elevator pitch, start infusing some more of those touch points, and you don't have to do it all at once. You can start to take them in little chunks and do a workshop around how does sales bring our brand promise to life? And let's revisit the core values and how are we showing up for our buyers and living up to our brand so that we provide that consistent experience so they're not fragmented, being like, the online sales counselor gave me this experience and the salesperson gave me this experience. Let's try to create some synergy and consistency across touch points.
Yeah, nothing breaks trust faster than getting one thing over here and a completely different experience over
Totally.
there. And it's just, I hate that when I go somewhere and I'm like, but I really liked that guy. Can I work with him the whole
Yes.
time? And that's, no, that's not how we do it. So,
Yes.
oh, great. So, in those meetings too, like when you're going over all of this and you're strategizing new ways of using those core values and really establishing what your culture and your experience is, I feel like that's a good time to audit too and check like what things are we doing that are hurting that? And
Yep.
is there like an internal culture that's actually working against us?
Absolutely. Do you have any I don't know why this came, it's such a cliche, but like negative Nancy's, because that's what's popping in my head right now. But do you have people that are undermining your brand integrity, that are undermining your culture? Because that starts to bleed through to other points. Are they not happy? Maybe they're not in a role that's best suited for them. Maybe they'd be better suited in a different department or somewhere else, even. It's a great time to take a gut check, and brands need to evolve. And so just because you did a brand guide 10 years ago, maybe it's time to revisit it. Maybe there's some things that don't fit. Maybe your buyer's needs have changed because your product is different.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's an afterthought. These builders will transition, they'll move to maybe a different target audience, but they hadn't revisited their core values, their brand promise, what do we stand for? And so I think it's really important to make sure that all of those things are aligning.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily like you said, like it's not necessarily like a bad thing or a bad person on the team. It's making sure that everyone's using their greatest strengths. That's a really something that I think all leaders should think about. And when everyone loves what they're doing and they love what they're working for and they understand it, I feel like the happier they are, the happier customers are going to be.
Totally.
So I love that saying is if you're what is it? It's like if your employees are happy, then your customers are happy, or they'll take care of your
Mhm.
employees. Yeah, something like that.
Yes,
But
I know
it's
where
like,
you're going with it.
yeah,
Yes.
if happy employees means happy customers, and I really believe that. But I've seen it a lot too, where it's that sales job. They're the ones that are taking care of the customers. So everyone else is the customer experience sucks, so it must be sales, which I don't agree with. I think that, like you said, it's all every department. But I want to separate it. It's okay. This is what
Yeah.
sales does. This is what marketing does. So let's start with sales. What do you think? Like, what role do they play with kind of shaping this customer experience?
They're your front line. They need to have a really clear understanding of what success looks like. And so, again, this comes back to training and activating the brand and giving them a playbook of what this looks like. And salespeople, they could be the best salesperson in the world, but it warrants revisiting, right? Nobody's perfect. You have to continue to sharpen your skills. Think of it as a professional athlete. That's what I think about. A lot of times I translate athletics into what we do, but they need to keep practicing. They need to continue to refine their skills and refine their approach. And they are at the front lines. And so they need the tools to help support them, give the best customer experience that they possibly can.
Yeah. Okay. So now me being on the marketing side, I'm like, I know all the things that I do like to try to help, but I feel like a lot of times the communication between what the salespeople actually need or what they're seeing doesn't necessarily come back to marketing. So I'm always preaching like you have to communicate between teams, but I'm not saying that as it's always sales because I know like I've seen a lot of myself included marketers that are like they just hold that stuff so tight and it's so important and we made this thing and like we just hold it. So, what do you feel like for marketers? What could we do better to work towards these same goals?
I think regular meetings with the sales team is critical. As you said, communication is key, and you can't just hear everything in an email. So it's like
Yeah.
your salespeople are your sight and sound, they're your boots on the ground. So get their perspective and use it. And then I'd also say sometimes as marketers, we're like, oh, there's a new tactic, or oh, squirrel, squirrel, even though we're really good about aligning with the core values and the brand promise. But I've seen it where builders have worked with a creative agency to create a brand. And then
Mhm.
I've watched it deteriorate and degrade because they don't go back. They aren't referencing their brand guidelines. They're in clear violation. So it's like you, it's everybody's got to have that renewed commitment and consistent commitment so that you can create the consistency across all touch points. And everybody can be guilty of this. And that's why I think it just requires regular check-ins and meetings, and maybe sales and marketing meet once a month and they're just focused on what are you hearing? What's working? How could we support your needs in sales and vice versa? And
Yeah.
keeping that communication really open and flowing on a regular basis, I think, is the key to success.
Yeah.
We can help
Yeah.
each other.
I know we're all working towards the same goals
We
here. And
are.
you said it's something interesting though too, like when they're working with creative agencies or having other vendors come in, that's a whole nother layer because
Yes.
now you're like you're educating them so that they can do this. But then is that communication coming back? I haven't really thought about that whole for builders, like making sure that. So how would you say to integrate like external people into your customer experience conversation?
That's a great question. So I think again, having a regular touch point. So for us, we have an assigned account manager, and I'm sure many agencies are the same. So you have that consistent person that you is your day-to-day contact. That person needs to have regular check-ins with sales and marketing. Typically, we invite both to the meeting, but that's not how everyone's always structured. So just making sure that you're creating an environment where you're getting feedback from your sales and marketing teams, it's really important. And then I would say it doesn't have to be on a weekly cadence or a monthly cadence, but maybe twice a year you're talking to the leadership team as well. And you can work those things out on the like up front. Every organization is structured a little bit differently and people
Hmm.
touch different things, but I think setting up a communication schedule is really important so that your agency is hearing what your people need and then fulfilling and acting on that so that what we're producing is resonating with the buyers and is supporting your teams as well.
Yeah. I've seen it over and over where a creative agency is creating like beautiful ads, they're creating beautiful content and everything looks great, but they don't realize that like sales is over here saying something completely different or they haven't communicated that. And then they find out later when they're getting let go that, oh, nothing was working. And it's, oh, but I thought everything was great. It's so hard. And I feel like there's this ripple effect of this disconnect that starts happening because that's going to bleed into not only external teams, but like every department that you have.
Totally. Yep.
And that frustration just builds. So for leadership, you've covered it already, but making sure it's a priority, talking about it in all of your meetings. What about people like our director level that are also working up? If you're like president or whoever's above you doesn't necessarily have those same goals, how can you talk about customer experience in a way that's going to connect with them?
I think customer feedback is so central to what builders are focused on. I think it'd be pretty easy to kick that up in terms of a priority for your president. But again, it's just how you frame it, and everybody's different in how they receive communication. And if you're working with an agency partner, maybe bring them in and say, hey, I really need help talking about improving the customer experience or recommitting to our brand, to leadership. Can you help draft some talking points, or would you join a call with our president to talk through this? And I think it's framing it for that particular person so that they can hear it and they understand it in a way that compels them to say, okay, this is important. I want to take action. I want to recommit to this. But I would say most of the time, presidents, yes, sales numbers and all of that is incredibly important and is always top of mind. But the brand architecture, especially for privately owned builders, is so near and dear to them that if they feel like that's threatened or they see that it's being undermined or that we can help show, I think we need to have a refocus on this. They're usually like, yes, let's do it. And
Yeah,
it doesn't always have to cost anything. It could just be an hour workshop with your team. And if they're all over the place, maybe it's a Zoom meeting and just saying, hey guys, we want to revisit this. This is really important. Something I heard Cheryl Palmer speak from Taylor Morrison, and something that really stuck with me is they have a teddy bear at all of their meetings and it represents their buyers. So they have a visual representation of their buyer in all of their meetings. And I thought that was so cool because they're consistently asking, hey, there's a customer here, there's a buyer, there's a family behind some of these decisions, that many of the decisions that they're making. How are we serving them? And so asking the right questions and like taking it back to the home buyers and leading with curiosity and empathy and really thinking, how could we make this stressful experience better? How can we anticipate their needs and how can we align everyone on our team to support that? And I think people are excited to help. Like
yeah,
most of us in the industry have bought a home, or we know someone who's bought a home, or we've watched someone else go through the experience. So we have some idea of how that looks. And I think all of us, we wouldn't be in the industry and love it if we didn't want to make that experience better for people.
for sure. That's the best part. Oh, and
Yes.
there's so much that goes into a home happen there. And I think that's such a fulfilling part of this industry that if you're not enjoying that, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And one
Like,
of the
I
exercises,
don't know if I want to talk to you if you don't like this.
yeah, exactly. And one of the exercises I saw, one of the builders that I worked with, I really loved, they mapped out like their whole entire buying experience. And they had each person in their company kind of rate the happiness score. And they had the little emojis like mad to happy. They're like, how do you think the buyer is feeling at this point?
Mm,
And that could be related to just like nerves or stress or whatever. But everyone did it. And it was interesting to see the different perspectives that everybody had on not only their little part of that, but
yeah.
like the entire thing. And it was really interesting, and they put them all up and everybody talked about it, and it was really easy to like identify. It's, oh, we can see everyone pretty much agrees here, or marketing didn't realize that like everybody was stressed out before they got there,
Yeah.
whatever. And so it was really cool, and I felt like the visual aspect of it made it like fun for everyone.
I love that. That is so cool. People talk about the buyer journey, but a lot of the builders still don't have it fully mapped out. They might have a couple people in the company might have it up in their heads, but do you really have it all written out? And does everyone in the company have a copy of that? And what does that look like? And I love the idea of visualizing how are
Mm,
people feeling, or when the construction manager is doing the first walk or whatever, what are perceptions like? And you have to hear from all these different folks that touch the customer at different times to understand it, because sales has a snapshot in time of how
yeah,
they understand what that home buyer is going through. And some people have a customer success manager that manages that client through the whole process, and they're their day-to-day contact no matter where they are. But some buyers or some home buyers don't have that. Their team
yeah.
isn't structured that way. So you really have to get everyone's perspective and warranty too. Once those people are in the
Mhm.
home and they have an issue that comes up, because things go wrong. Even if the home is built really high quality, it's like something always goes wrong somewhere along the process. And it's
Yeah.
stressful no matter what. But to have a visual representation of how people are feeling at each touch point, that is so cool. I love that idea. Everyone should do that. That's great.
Yeah, it was really cool. I've only seen one builder that has done it so far, but I think too, like it gave their team, like not only are you trying to build a great experience for all these buyers, it gave them a little bit more empathy because they're like, it's not, the goal is not to have just like super happy faces all the way across.
Yeah,
It's, you know, that they're going to have some anxiety here. They that they're going to be closing, they're going to be anxious to get in, and there's going to be all these different emotions. So like understanding that and having some empathy for it also creates a better experience.
totally. Totally. And then even to your point, knowing where those points in the sale are, where people are feeling uncomfortable or anxious, or you can start to anticipate what their needs might be, and also setting expectations. So saying, this is a stressful time. I can see that this is
Yeah.
hard, and I want you to know you're not alone in this. We've seen this before. And just validating their feelings and validating that this is normal also makes them feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not the crazy home buyer. It's
Yeah.
allowing people to have real emotions about something that they do infrequently, and it's really expensive, and it is stressful. It's filled
Mhm.
with mixed emotions. It's joyful, it's stressful, it's all the things. And I think people need to know that, especially if they've never purchased a home before. It's a
Yeah.
not all sunshine and roses, and things will go wrong. And I think if a salesperson can lead with that and lead with empathy, that when that buyer reaches that point of frustration or anxiety, they already knew that there were going to be points along the way that were going to be bumpy, and they're not as going to be as emotionally triggered. They're going to recognize, oh, okay, I was working, the salesperson kind of warned me about this. So
Yeah.
it's out of nowhere.
Yeah. And you're there too when there are such high points of it, when they're super excited and you get to
Yes.
be there for that excitement, and that's going to fuel other things. I remember the first time I've only bought one home, but like when I bought my home, it was very like, okay, just sign the papers and then we're going to build this house. And then I
Yeah.
really didn't hear from anybody. And so all of those emotions that I had happened and nobody on the builder side knew. And
Yeah.
if I was like freaking out about something, like I had to reach out. And so they really, not to call them out, but I'm sure they're not listening, but they just didn't realize. So there was a lot of missed opportunities. So just knowing that about myself, I'm sure that a lot of buyers are having those same feelings, and hopefully they're being supported, but more
Yes.
than I was. But it's just so important, and there's so many opportunities to just help your buyer through those parts.
Totally.
So if you were, this is my favorite part of every episode. If you were to say like one thing or give one piece of advice or one question that you would encourage our listeners to ask to just improve this or to audit, what would that be?
Map out your journey and look for opportunities at every touch point for incremental improvements. They can be the smallest thing. Just
That's such a
map out
good point
the journey,
too. It's
every touch point.
small,
Yeah, just
small
little.
things.
Because
Yeah.
if every touch point has a little something that you recalibrate or slightly improve, the entire experience is so much better for it. I'm reading a book called Atomic Habits, and it's all about just like the 1%, right? And I think I read it years ago, but I revisited it, and it's so true. You can make a big change, just a tiny little.
Yeah. Little efforts, like it's
Yes.
like a handwritten note, like an
Yes.
extra phone call in your process. Like these are
Yes.
not expensive changes to make.
No, some of them don't cost you anything. It's just and awareness. It's bringing an awareness to it beyond it being a buzzword, beyond it saying, oh, we really need to focus on customer experience or we really need to improve our buyer scores. Okay, how do you do that? And I think
Yeah.
it starts with really mapping it out. Go through the process as if you were the buyer,
Yeah.
and from very early stages all the way through, think through it. And you can break it into chunks. Say, okay, we're going to look at step 1 through 5 today, and then do it over the course of 100 days. I think that's great. It's a 100-day plan. Come up with a 100-day plan for your customer experience and how you're
I
going to
love that.
make little improvements.
Yeah, I love that. So what do you think, what would be your advice for you've got this 100-day plan. There's bound to be moments where you're like overwhelmed by, oh gosh, like we need to make a million changes or whatever. Like how would you guide someone through that to make those small changes and to rein it back in?
I think having everyone who's involved in the process, like creating a little task force. So, someone from sales, someone from marketing, someone from executive leadership, and have a customer experience task force, send someone from home warranty, whatever that looks like, create a little team and have them meet weekly, come up and have a point person that's really good at operations. Like if you have a VPO, they should probably map out the 100-day plan and have everyone understand that like we're not looking for some massive change. Let's start small and let's have this task force activated every year. And so they just take another chip off the block. And if you need help, bring in an outside consultant to help lead it. That's another option. Absolutely something that builders can do if they feel like, hey, we don't have the internal team to support an initiative like that. Look outside. That's okay too. But if you don't
Yeah.
have the budget, create a little mini task force. And
Yeah.
people will feel so much pride and ownership over making little tiny changes that lead to a big, oh wow, the customers are happier. And you'll start seeing it in your scores. Like I think it's what people like about it is it's measurable. Like you'll be able to see the differences. It might take a little bit of time, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree. And I love the idea of a task force. I love the idea of giving people, certain people, like a little bit of ownership over this. And
Mhm.
that's also a way to create that internal culture. Like you're going to start helping each other. So leaning on your team, I think, is so important. And again, the more communication, the better. So such good tips. I love this 100-day plan. That's such a good idea.
Thank you. I took it from something we did earlier in the year that didn't have anything to do with it, but Kelly, who you also know on our team, executed it and she was amazing at it. So now we're doing a brand refresh ourselves. So we have now a renewed 100-day plan. So you can get a lot done. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty cool. And it doesn't feel as daunting when you're like, oh, we have 12 months. How are we going to accomplish this? Nope. Let's have a 100-day plan. Let's put some initiative. Let's put some investment behind this. What are we going to do to make this successful? And everyone really rises up. It's cool to see.
It's easy to get overwhelmed by stuff because at least for me, again, personally, I'm like, okay, we need to do this all. And I've got a million steps and we're going to do them
Yeah.
all today. And I start getting overwhelmed and then I'm like,
Yes.
no. So the 100 days is we've got 100 days and we're going to take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
And just taking one step
Mhm.
that's good.
Yeah.
This has been so fun. I thank you for coming on. I want to give the people a chance to reach out to you. So if someone wanted to pick your brain about anything we've talked about today or about what Milesbrand does, how could they reach out to you?
I would love that. And first of all, thank you for having me on today, Sarah. I really appreciate it. This has been such a fun conversation. If someone wants to reach out to me, they can email me directly at genevieve@milesbrand.com. And I would love to chat more about customer journeying or just anything about what we do as an agency to empower builders and developers in our great industry.
Yes, everyone go reach out to Genevieve. She is great. And also this podcast, comment. I will tag Genevieve as well. So wherever you're watching this, all of her info should be in the description box if I remember to put it there. And then come back again next week. We're going to have more exciting topics and guests. I thank you for being here and I hope to see you in our next episode. So Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Genevieve. Have a great
Thank
day.
you, Sarah. Bye.